When an avoidant comes back after a month of no contact, these are the only true reasons. Avoidants are some of the most self-contained people you will ever try to understand. They disappear without a clean explanation, go weeks or months without reaching out, and often leave you feeling like the entire connection meant far less to them than it did to you. But here's the twist. While they may seem like they have completely moved on, maybe even look like it from the outside, that doesn't mean they have. In fact, some avoidants don't just think about the people they pulled away from. They become quietly, almost obsessively unable to stay gone. They just won't tell you that. Not when they come back. Not in how they explain it. Not even to themselves in an honest moment. It's like they spent months building a case for why leaving was the right call, and then something kept quietly dismantling it piece by piece until the distance became harder to maintain than the connection ever was. And something in them finally moved. If you've ever been blindsided by an avoidant reappearing after a long silence and had no idea what it actually meant or whether to trust it, this video might finally give you the answer. Let's talk about the 5 real reasons avoidants come back after months of no contact, and why their nervous system leads them back in ways they often can't fully articulate even to themselves. Most people who get a message from a returning avoidant interpret it the wrong way. Not because they aren't paying attention, but because the instincts that make sense in normal relationships, assuming they miss you, assuming they've changed, assuming the return means they're finally ready, are the exact interpretations that can lead you straight back into the same cycle. The more hopeful you're reading, the less accurately you may be seeing what's actually happening. And nobody tells you this, so you just take the return at face value, wondering later why nothing actually shifted. But the problem was never whether they came back. It was always understanding why. Research from the University of California found that people with avoidant attachment styles show measurably higher activation in threat response neural pathways during sustained emotional closeness, meaning their nervous system is not being indifferent when they pull away. It is genuinely registering intimacy as risk. And critically, that risk assessment does not simply switch off during no contact. It keeps running in the background, quietly processing, weighing in some cases, reconsidering. The silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is the avoidance nervous system doing the only kind of emotional work it knows how to do, alone and on its own timeline. I work with people navigating these returns constantly, and the pattern I see more than any other is this. Someone who has finally started to heal, who has started to build a life that doesn't revolve around waiting, suddenly gets that message, and everything they built overnight feels fragile. What makes it so disorienting is that the avoidant often seems genuine, because in many cases they are just returning for reasons that are more complicated than "I love you and I was wrong." And unless you understand what those reasons actually are, you cannot make a clear decision about what to do with their return. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is driving them back, and what each reason actually means for you going forward. Let's get into it. The first reason is that the silence revealed what the noise was covering up. Avoidants are remarkably good at using busyness, detachment, and forward motion to avoid sitting with what they actually feel. But no contact has a way of stripping those distractions away, slowly and without warning. What started as relief, the relief of not having to manage someone else's emotions or explain themselves or show up in ways that felt threatening, begins to shift. The absence of you stops feeling like freedom and starts feeling like a specific, kind of quiet they didn't choose. They don't miss the relationship in the abstract. They miss something precise. The way you made them feel, a conversation they keep returning to, a version of themselves they only seem to access around you. That specificity is what moves them, not sentiment, recognition. The second reason is that their avoidant logic ran out of road. When an avoidant pulls away, they usually do it with a story. The timing was wrong. You wanted too much. It was getting too complicated. They needed to focus on themselves. And for a while, that story holds. It has to. It's what makes the distance feel justified rather than just painful. But stories have a shelf life. The justification that felt airtight at month 1 starts to develop cracks by month 3 or 4, especially the evidence they expected to find, that they're better off alone, that the connection wasn't real, that you've been replaced by something easier doesn't actually materialize. When the story stops working and there's nothing left to replace it with, the avoidant doesn't always have a name for what happens next. They just notice they're thinking about you again. The third reason is that something in their external world destabilizes them. Avoidants maintain their independence as a kind of emotional infrastructure. As long as life is manageable, the walls hold. But when something shakes the foundation, a loss, a failure, a period of real loneliness they can't intellectualize their way out of, the calculus changes. Suddenly, the self-sufficiency that felt like strength starts to feel like isolation. And in those moments, the nervous system doesn't scan for the person who was the most exciting or the most persistent. It scans for the person who felt the safest. If that was you, you will feel it. They won't necessarily announce why they're reaching out, but the timing will tell you everything. The fourth reason is that they watch you stop waiting. This one is counterintuitive, but it is one of the most consistent patterns in avoidant returns. Avoidants are acutely attuned to emotional dynamics, especially from a distance, and there is something that shifts in them when they sense that you have genuinely moved on, not performed moving on, not strategically posted happiness. Actual forward motion, a life that looks full, an energy that no longer feels like it's organized around their absence. The avoidant who felt crowded by your closeness suddenly feels something they didn't expect to feel, the specific discomfort of being truly, freely let go. And for a nervous system that secretly fears abandonment beneath all the independence it performs, that feeling has a way of prompting action that nothing else managed to. The fifth reason is that they had a genuine internal shift, but it's more fragile than it looks. Sometimes the avoidant comes back because something real did change. A period of therapy, a relationship that failed in a way that forced self-reflection, or simply enough time and enough loss that the old patterns finally became more painful than the vulnerability they were protecting against. This is a return people hope for, and it does happen, but it is important to understand what it is and what it isn't. It is a beginning, not a resolution. The avoidant who has done real internal work will show you that in behavior, over time, consistently, not just in the warmth of the initial return. The feeling they come back with is real. The question is whether the capacity to sustain something different has actually been built, or whether the feeling is just the distance talking. None of these reasons are simple, and none of them come with a guarantee. An avoidant coming back is not automatically a second chance, and it is not automatically meaningless either. What it is information about where they are, about what moved them, and about what they're actually capable of offering now versus what they were capable of before. Avoidants do not return to people they have fully let go of. They return to people who left a mark they couldn't smooth over with time, or logic, or someone new. That matters. But you are allowed to decide what to do with it from a place of clarity rather than relief. The question worth sitting with is not just whether you still want them, but whether who they are right now, not who they could become, is actually someone you want to let back in. Because you deserve that honesty too. Not eventually. Now.